because people, it's a value add for the Black Mental Health Alliance. I've had a number of people say, how'd you get in partnership with Kaiser Permanente? Like, I don't know how much money they think they're getting or whatever, but it's a big deal that the Black Mental Health Alliance is branded with Kaiser Permanente on these Mind Health Shop Talks. Even to the point where there are other shops that have called us to ask us to do this in their salon.
Oh, wow.
They're not in the zip code, so Alma and I talked about how we could do that differently. But that's just a benefit of being in partnership with Kaiser Permanente. So we are happy for this partnership. People, we think it's a big deal. Other people think it's a big deal because it's a big deal. And so we never know exactly how many people are going to come out each month. Sometimes we get huge crowds, sometimes we get a few. But I believe, as you know, in the church, my pastor, Dr. Harold A. Carter Sr. used to say, if he doesn't care how many people are in the pews, he's going to preach like it's a full congregation. And so that's the way we're going to run our program. It's like, whoever's supposed to be here is here. That's the way I feel about it. And so tonight, we welcome you, and we thank Brenda for hosting us at her salon. I always get a big source of pride for being here, Brenda, because I always say you have prime real estate. And so proud of you. And I want to thank my benefactor at Kaiser Permanente, but also my dear friend, Alma Roberts.
So, it's a two-way street is what I'm trying to say. And I'm so grateful because Jan and I had a relationship well before I came to Kaiser Permanente, that I have been able to, in my role at Kaiser, bring these resources, these organizations grounded in community, to their attention, to advance the work around equity and justice, and shape things like this. So we got passionate owners who open their shops up to every weekend we're in somebody's shop doing something. Yeah. The mobile unit back here giving out flu shots, and the CNA's in here doing this. Then you guys come in, and Jim goes here doing workouts, and so that's part of this community health focus, and I'm so happy to be able to bring those kinds of resources to where they need to be. And Jan's name is all the way up to our Black Mental Health Alliance is all the way up to our regional office. This program gets talked about by our big CEO, Mr. Bernard Tyson. He talks about good health, great hair. They single out the mind health shop talks as a highlight. And so we're just here tonight to keep the ball rolling. We've got great topics, though I do think this next year we will skip December this time of year. There's just too much going on. And just go right into January. But with that, you're going to introduce your...
So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the lovely. I said, wow, when I saw your headshot, Alana is always on me about branding me. And I was thinking, I need to find out who her photographer was. That is a great headshot, but you're just as beautiful in person. April Moreno is a psychotherapist and owner of Moreno Consulting and Counseling, and she provides counseling services, mental health workshops, and consulting. She's approved by the Maryland Board Social Work Examiners as a certified clinical supervisor, and she provides clinical supervision for social workers and mentoring for mental health professionals. April provides therapy for children, teenagers, and adults. And she helps clients address a range of issues such as depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and life stressors. She has an advanced certification in trauma and has experience treating clients diagnosed with PTSD. And tonight, April is going to share with us around the topic, beating the holiday blues.
Well, April, I'm also chair of the board of Roberta's House, which does grief and trauma, so we'll talk.
Right.
So let's get out of her way.
And are you here in Baltimore, April? Is she located here?
Yes, my office is located in Kaysville.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, and
That's
then
good.
with Hope, that is Derby with Hope that's in Baltimore.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So what I asked April to do is to change the format a little bit because she had prepared a big PowerPoint presentation and all of that. So I asked her to come and sit with me and let's have a chat. And since we have a small intimate group, and then as we go through having that conversation, you all think of your questions, and April's going to answer your questions, and it's going to be a great evening.
Great.
Hello. So April, can you talk to us when we say beating the holiday blues? What exactly, how would you define the holiday blues?
So I'm going to go with NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. Their definition is the holiday blues are temporary feelings of anxiety or depression during the holidays that can be associated with stress, extra stress, unrealistic expectations, or even memories that accompany the season. So for them, they talk about you might feel fatigue, loneliness, isolation. So where you might be a little more social, you tend to kind of want to be by yourself. Sense of frustration, sense of loss, and sadness. And for those, and those are more of like the sad mocking of depression, but for some people who do not experience depression-related symptoms, they can have what we call stress response, because a part of the holiday blues, what causes it is stress. So a stress response may be like headaches, overeating, excessive drinking. So you might just normally just take a shot of wine, a little glass, now you just got the whole bottle. You're just picking up your drinking habits. Sleeping patterns have changed. So you might have difficulty going to sleep, difficulty staying asleep. And that might just be to worrying thoughts or just constant thinking about all the stresses that you have to deal with.
So who would you say is at risk of the holiday blues? Sometimes people think only because it is a person who doesn't have anyone to be around for the holidays, or they're thinking about maybe a loved one not being present during the holidays. But talk to us a little bit more about who could experience these holiday blues.
That's a good question. Anyone. And then one of the things that NAMI wanted to point out is not just adult thing. Actually, children and teens can also experience it. Of course, we cannot talk about this topic and not talk about those who are already diagnosed with a clinical or mental health diagnosis. So studies show that people who are already living with a mental illness are at risk of being affected by it as well. NAMI actually did a survey, and they found that 64% of people with mental illness reported the holiday blues made their condition worse. So about 24% found that the holidays made their condition a lot worse, and 40% said somewhat worse. I think I probably have like over 150 therapy sessions a year, 200. And I can tell you, I feel like as I was preparing for this, I feel like I could talk about this without even going through this, because it's almost like clockwork. My clients that have depression and anxiety, some come in and just say, look, we might have double in sessions, that they're already grieving, that they're already down, they're already anxious. Just the normal stresses, this normal hustle and bustle and the expectations tend to make their anxiety go up, like with family and so forth. So definitely adults. It's also shown that women are actually a little bit more affected by the holiday blues. And that might just be because depression, actually women tend to be a little higher than men also as well.
Okay. So when we think about the holiday blues, tell us some things that you see in your practice and your patients as it relates to what may cause the holiday blues.
That's a good question. So how many can I name?
Just roll them on out.
So we're going to talk about it. The one big thing you might hear a lot about is having unrealistic expectations of self and others. We see it. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's supposed to snow. It's supposed to, oh, I love my Christmas gift. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. And what society does, and that's the other thing too, over-commercialization. The pressure that what society says that it's supposed to look like. I call it the perfect storm. It's a perfect setup. A lot of people go into this knowing that there are already some things that they cannot be able to do, whether it's due to finances, loved one being gone. So definitely unrealistic expectations. Psychology Day cited a survey, and 53% talked about that they experienced financial stress due to holidays. There was another one who actually like in the 60s. I believe it could actually be a little bit higher, but the numbers fluctuate. Financial stress is a big one. It's a big one for a lot of people. As I was going through many different studies, financial stress was another big one. The extra stress. You know, we got relatives, and when we talk about relatives, we like to think that we all like all of them. There's usually one that's like, oh my gosh, that's stressful. Shopping. So whether if I don't know, like for me, I'm going to be honest, I haven't even started shopping yet. So I'm going to be the person at the store.
They'll be kicking me out as they're trying to close on Christmas Eve.
You know, we got the hosting. If you're hosting, some of us haven't cleaned our house since last spring, but we're going to get it clean. I got to get it clean, and then we got to get the bed ready, we got to clean up, we got to set up, we got to get it right, get the food right. That's exhausting. Traveling, if you're in the airport, depending on when you're traveling the airport, that can be a mess. Driving can be a lot. Also, the inability to be with loved ones. For people in the military, you know, I remember my sister when she was in the military, she got stationed in Korea for 2 years, and this one holiday, she couldn't come home to my nieces and her husband. That was rough. The loss of a loved one, that's definitely big. You know, we talk about former President Bush. He just buried his father this month.
First Christmas without his mom and his dad,
Yes.
who both passed this year.
Hip hop mogul Puffy, aka Sean Combs, Diddy. He just buried the mother of his children. These little girls, I don't think are even 15 years old. 2 twins and I think 2 sons or 1 son. I don't know. These are difficulties for a lot of people. And that goes in with the other issue of memories of past holidays. When people pass away and things change, I hear a lot of my clients reminiscing about, you know, well, when my mom was here, this is how it happened, and we get stuck on how it used to be. That's a big one as well.
I think also that, and you probably do this in your practice and in your discussion with your clients, in relationship to people feeling like it's okay to not be what other people expect. You know, for instance, or you go through something 1 year or several years, and then you say, you know what, I'm not doing that. So I've already decided I'm not inviting anybody over for Christmas dinner, because I did a big Thanksgiving dinner, and I've done it for the last several years, and I know, I always say it always takes me out, and it does. I mean, it's a lot. And so I've decided I'm not going to do both holidays, but I think that comes with age and maturity also, that I can say, you know what, I'm not doing it. People say, well, you know, what time you want us to come over for dinner on Christmas? You can come over, but we're not having a good time.
And that goes back to the first thing I said, unrealistic expectations of self and others. People might expect you to still have it as a tradition. That's what you do.
Right.
And some people are like, no, you know, and that can be frustrating. It can leave people disappointed, feeling a little, you know, just like, oh, she's not having it. Just in general, that's a big one too.
You know, I'm thinking about the natural disasters that have happened.
Yes.
The fires in California, and even in Puerto Rico, where we're going into the 3rd year almost, and they still have massive devastation. And even though it's not something that I personally come in contact with, just knowing that there are people who, unlike myself, are having these things to deal with, that's a downer.
Yes.
Right.
So that's another good one. And dealing with changes in the family structure and obligations, that's a big one. So for people who are going through divorce, this is their first year of divorce, you know, you're doing this. Both of my parents are remarried, and I remember when I was younger, when they got divorced, in the beginning, it was a little tension. My father was lucky to just pull up in the driveway. And so it wasn't like, you know, he could come over while we opened the gifts. I remember, and there was this one holiday, I don't know if it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, but our family's huge in the holidays. And it was our weekend. So people who know you have to share those weekends with your parents, I had to go with my dad. I remember feeling like, and then have to feel like I have to choose between which one, and then I want to be like, so when we talk about kids and teens can go through that, that's some real, just like grief. You know, and the more I think about it, I probably did have a little bit blues, because I just wanted to can we just be like normal, you know?
Right. Why can't we just all get along, right?
Yeah, you know, and not even but just having a normal setup, not have to go to 2 different households, you know?
But that also plays into people not shaming you into doing that. So my oldest son, his father and I, we always work toward
what was best for him, our
Mhm.
son, right? And so people would joke me when I would go and do things with them. Like we would spend my son's birthday together. We would all go out to dinner or something like that. And they would be like, so you went out to dinner with him and his wife? I'm like, yeah, because it's about Omar to me. You know, it's not about them. And I didn't have any issue with either one of them. But, you know, people's thinking that that's weird. You know, even one time we all went to the movies and they were like, so you sat with them at the movies? Yeah.
I don't see it as being weird. I think it's helping the child. I think it's helping the child because with him, when he become older, he can see the example that you and his father set, where he had someone else in his life and you had someone else, and you guys came together and you made it normal for him.
Right.
That reminds me of Will Smith and Jada.
Yeah.
They was around talking about that. It works for them. It doesn't have to make sense.
Right. It works for them.
Yeah. And I think they actually go on vacation
Right.
together.
So
So, yeah.
Tuffy did the same thing now. He had all those wives,
Yeah.
all the children.
All the women.
Yeah, they were one big family. And even the wives eulogized the one who passed. So, yeah.
The other last three things I would say is conflict amongst family members. We like to think that, you know, like in the movies, everyone can get around the table and by the fireplace and sip on coffee, but there is still, even generational, sometimes in families that carry down. And that is very, very stressful for a lot of people. And people sometimes feel obligated that, you know, again, the expectations like I'm supposed to be my family, but sometimes some things, there are some very dysfunctional families. There are some very toxic relationships. So that is a stressor, and that can get people down a little bit. You know, and just ignoring your feelings of sadness. Nobody wants to be the Grinch. The pressure we put on ourselves to be happy, when really we are so drained. I mean, we have some people who have to put that mask on and go to work to deal with people they don't want to deal with, and think about how draining that is every day. Let alone when you're dealing with some real serious factors are not making you feel so joyful around the holiday.
So this wouldn't be a shop talk if we also didn't talk about strategies. So you have outlined for us very nicely what it looks like, who can be affected, and some studies that you found and research data that you share with us. But what are some strategies or tools and tips when you find yourself in this spirit of being in the holiday blues?
One of the big things you're going to see a lot of people saying is that we got to establish realistic goals and expectations for ourselves. I don't know if there's this myth of what I like to call the Cape Syndrome, you know, the superwoman, superman. We think that the more we take on, the better. We have to be real about ourselves, about what we can take on. Like you're saying, this year I can't do it. I can't do it. I had a lot of things going on, and that's okay. You might can't go to 4 different holiday events. You might can't go here. If your situation changed, if your finances change, we have to be real about what we can do and be unapologetic about it. And that is another thing. Make a to-do list and keep it simple. You know, keep it really simple. Another thing I talk about is acknowledging your feelings. This may sound small, but how can we defeat something that we won't even face? If you won't even acknowledge that you're feeling down, if you won't even acknowledge that you're feeling anxious, how can we think about possible solutions? How can we get you support groups? How can we get you in, you know, whatever, if you won't acknowledge it? That's one of the best things you can do is say, this is how I feel. And something I always, to take it a step further, I say, okay, once you realize that, I like people to ask this question, is there something I can do about it? I can't tell you, I have people come to me and they'll say, April, you know, I'm feeling this, I'm, you know, my husband, or I've been angry, and they'll tell me everything that's wrong, right? I ask this one question, and it's so interesting. I ask them, I say, what's bothering you? And usually what you get is somebody who can tell you or get an idea, but then you got the other half who just,
Nothing.
no, they don't know.
Right.
We don't know. Sometimes we're so caught in what's going wrong and how we feel and what's the symptoms of our behaviors, but we don't ask ourselves that one question: what is going on with me? What's bothering me this season? Why is it that every time this season comes around, I'm feeling down? And I have this pen. I was showing you this pen. I like to take a step further. Also, I tell my clients, I like them to take a sheet of paper, put a line, write your stressors. What's bothering me? It might be parents are no longer here. Gained 25 pounds, you know. And then you're gonna put your stressors, and you're gonna go back to those stressors, and you're gonna ask yourself, is there something I can do about it? There's two types of stressors, something that we can do something about, and something that we cannot do something about, you know? And for the ones that we can do something about, we write the task list. Okay, gain 25 pounds, get to the gym, check my thyroid, make sure birth control pills are not contributing, all the different things. And it leaves you feeling empowered and focusing on the task that has to be done, rather just kind of staying stuck in just what's not going wrong. Now, for something like my dog died and I want my dog back, can you do something about that? Can you change that? No. But even in the no, there is something that you can do, and you can accept it. And when I say the word accept, another dog. And you can accept that your dog's not coming back. And accepting doesn't mean that you like it. It doesn't mean that you agree with it. It means that you're acknowledging that it is what it is. And for my more Christian, more spiritual people, I like this. It goes to, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the serenity prayer. And if not, it says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. If people can get that, if people can understand that, I mean, sometimes that actually, when people struggle with this concept, that actually contributes to mental health disorders, anxiety, sometimes some forms of agoraphobia. I know Paula Dean shared her story and said that, you know, when her father abruptly died when she was younger, she developed agoraphobia, afraid to go outside because in her mind she said, if I don't go outside, she could make something, I can stop myself or my kids from dying. Whew, you can't control that.
No.
You know? So that's one of the things, you know, just asking that. Do not isolate. I know sometimes when we're being bothered, we want to be by ourselves, but be around other people. Another big thing is eliminate or decrease the amount of time you spend on social media over the holidays. Facebook, aka Facebook.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I like to say that, in all fairness, you know, social media is a good thing, especially if you're on there for support groups and things like this around this time. But if you're coming from a mind frame where you're vulnerable, you're not feeling good about yourself, say you're stressed out because you don't have the finances to provide the type of gifts that you feel like your family deserves. You go on Instagram or Facebook, what are you gonna see? Bow on the car, or oh my God, it's gonna make you, it's what it's gonna do is trigger. It's gonna trigger those same emotions that you don't want. If you're lonely and you don't have your family here, you go on Facebook, what are you gonna see? Love my auntie, here's my grandma. It's gonna trigger that, you know? So I always say if you can, you know, because we kind of sometimes go in there with the comparison. Well, so we might have to decrease just over the holidays how much time we spend on there. Stick to your budget. Set a budget and stick to it. You know, I know this is a hard one. Last year I kind of messed up with that.
With the contest, did you hear the contest? I think it was on TV. If they will pay you if you stay off of social media for 1 year,
Woo!
they will pay you $1,000.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
1,000 or 10,000 if you can stay off of it for 1 year.
I hope it's 10,000.
Because for 10,000 I can do it.
You'll find out.
The other thing I'd like for you to share with our audience is just when you talked about naming it and understanding it. When I'm talking about mental illness, and I'm not a therapist, but I can do broad strokes around mental health and mental illness because I've been around such wonderful mental health clinicians in my lifetime. I talk to people about checking in on people, for instance, and so not being afraid to do that or feeling that that is intrusive. So if I hadn't heard from Lynn and we didn't work together, and I'm calling and she's not answering, I'm texting, then I need to make another effort to say, well, what's going on with Lynn? Because usually when I call her, she calls me right back.
Right.
Especially if I know she's had some kind of major life event with regard to a breakup or loss of a parent or something like that. So I always encourage people also to check in on your friends. And when you see something, it's almost like the thing that you see at airports and train stations about if you see something, say something. I really believe that. If you see a change in somebody's even appearance, they're usually very well kept and groomed, and they're just looking like, wow, he needs a haircut, and he's letting his beard grow, and
shirt is wrinkled, like what's going on with you,
Yeah.
So just, caring enough to be observant enough to check in on people.
And not even just that, but check on them after the holidays.
Yeah.
You know, too. Like follow up. Even if it's not a holiday thing, follow up with them. Sometimes we have the tendency to check on people exactly, but we forget the follow up part. Because we get in our own, just everyday hustle and bustle. I would definitely say that's a good point. And let's just say, for example, you do notice that someone is. Try to listen to them, talk to them, ask them what's going on. Try to be non-judgmental. Offer help. If it is a situation where they would benefit from talking to a professional, offer to help them find one. Even offer to help accompany them to their first appointment if needed to. I think those are all really good things. And I even take it a step further. I always call in the community. Call to the community to step up also, especially leaders, whether you're pastors or so forth. I know sometimes around this season we talk about, when we go to church, we hear the plays, Jesus for the reason, for the season, or whatever your religion is. But sometimes I think it'd be good for pastors to acknowledge that sometimes your congregation members, some of them may not be in the best season, and just encourage them to, maybe have an extra support group, a prayer group afterwards.
So you want to finish your thought?
Go ahead.
So I was just going to ask you to talk to us. I remember, and Dr. Prim is in the audience, but she may not remember this. And this was years ago when I was first at the Black Mental Health Alliance. She was the first person that I ever heard talk about seasonal affective disorder. And one of my friends called me recently, very early in the morning, because people know I'm an early riser. And he just said, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It's 6 o'clock in the morning. What do you mean, what am I doing?" And so he's like, "So what's going on?" And I'm just like, "What's wrong? What's going on with you?" And he's just like, "My seasonal, I don't think he called it seasonal affective disorder." He said, "But my seasonal disorder is it's on overdrive right now, and I just need to talk to somebody." So a couple things about that. One is that he knew enough to reach out to somebody.
Right.
And then two, he knew what it was. Like some people are like, "I don't know what's going on with me." So I just want you to kind of talk about like what it looks like when you say may have clinical depression versus I'm just having a bad day versus holiday blues versus seasonal affective disorder. You could kind of talk about
Gradation.
Yeah, that's a good question. Some of, like, even when you look at some of the symptoms of the holiday blues, certain things can look like it mocks a clinical disorder, but let me just be clear about this. When we talk about clinical disorders, we're talking about medical conditions like major depressive disorder. And that's different in the contents because when we not seasonal, but holiday blues is usually something situational. It tends to come around this season. It will kind of pass, and you'll kind of know that. But if you're going in with certain symptoms over 2 weeks and so forth, you might be looking at something different. But major depressive disorder is a certain amount of symptoms that happen during a certain time frame. Usually, if you're having this for two weeks or more, but most importantly, if they're severe enough to cause impairment in daily activity, in daily functioning. So that might mean if it's, let's say work, you got suspended, you got written up because now you showed up late multiple times, you been tardy how many times, and that's because you lack motivation to get out of bed, you're struggling to get up, you're so down. You have impairments now in your social. People are saying, where have you been? You're not answering my phone calls, you're isolating. You're not showing up for your events, You're arguing more. There's more arguments, So there's impairments in your daily function. So it is and it should be taken, and it's very, very serious. It's a lot more serious. And something else too, when we talk about major depressive disorder, what you'll see sometimes is people tend to be hopeless. We look for those words like hopelessness. People worthy, not feeling worthy. That's another big thing. So if someone's having that, of course, suicide ideations, suicide thoughts, suicide plans, definitely need to seek immediate attention as soon as possible. So there's a difference. And with a clinical disorder, it's going to carry on. It's more chronic. It's going to go and last longer after the seasons. So if you notice that after the holidays you still have this lingering and these cluster of symptoms, and when I talk about symptoms, I'm talking about it's kind of similar. Like, so fatigue. Let me make sure I'm not fatigue. Difficulty concentrating. Changes in sleep pattern. You know, sometimes people they normally get like 7 hours of sleep and they're down to like 4 hours, or it's interrupted. You know, those type of things. You're changing your eating.
Or they're sleeping way more than they want.
Yes, throughout the day, oversleeping. Changes in eating patterns. So you notice that you're overeating or not eating at all. You know, these are all different symptoms that we're talking about. So
another one is blaming yourself for things.
Yes.
Difficulty making decisions.
Yes. Yes. That's another one. Yeah. So a lot of different symptoms like that. Okay. I don't know if I helped answer that.
You did.
Okay.
You did. One of the things that I think it would be helpful is for people to share. They may, individual persons may say, well, that's not my issue. I don't think I'm experiencing the holiday blues, but I see it in someone else. I see it in a loved one. What would you suggest they do, in addition to the checking in part and maybe showing concern? What are some of the things you might suggest that a loved one could do?
If they are showing signs of this?
If one of their loved ones is showing signs.
Going back there, talking to them about it. You know, talking to them like what's going on with you, encouraging them, and not just talking, but you see these signs, you're gonna have to encourage them that it's time. You haven't got it. You haven't. I smell you. You haven't took a bath in the last 4 days. You haven't been out. We do bowling every 2 weeks. You haven't been out. You're not yourself. Like you said, you can tell when someone's off for themselves. It's time. It's time that we go see Dr. Such and Such or whoever it is. It's time, and you encourage them. And I know in reality this sounds good because if you work with people, everybody's not gonna go get help right away. It's kind of like, so you almost like an intervention, like how can I strategically, you know? And sometimes it might take that. It might take getting a person that they might be more receptive to, and say, okay, he or she's not listening to me. Let me go get Auntie such and such or Grandma. Let Grandma come talk to him and say, it's time to make that phone call. And not only is it time, but like I said, you might have to actually follow through with them and say, this is the number. I'm gonna sit here with you. We're gonna call together. Matter of fact, I'm gonna come with you to make sure that you go. It might be that bad, you know. And sometimes, depending on if someone really does have severe depression, it may not even be that they're trying to be resistant. They're just so low, so unmotivated. Then they might actually need that extra. Let me help you. You know, get there.
You know, it's helpful for folks to know that they're not the only ones going through this. And even if it has a title, you know, a diagnosis attached to it, sometimes that helps. But to be able to say, you know, it's this at the time of the year, you're not the only one, and it's, you know, let's just go talk, or let's talk, or let's go find some help. I think it's important to say that as well.
Yeah, I think testimonials are very important because a lot of times when people are going through something, whether it is a feeling of loss or just being discouraged for whatever reason, being a single mom, being, you know, whatever your situation is, and, you know, struggling because you can't find a job, you just think like, well, nobody else is experiencing this, or I'm the only one. When really there are a lot of people who have done it and have come through, and I think it's good to share your story so people will know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So I guess just to wrap up before we take any other questions that you may have, if you want to share any resources, or I also I'd like to, before you wrap up, to share with us how people engage a therapist, for instance. So we at the Black Mental Health Alliance, people call our office, they speak to Ms. Maxwell, and she, you know, goes through her very caring process of helping them find the right therapist. And so what does that mean when we say not necessarily helping someone find the right therapist, but identifying the right therapist for you? What does that look like?
for the actual person calling it.
Well, right. So how, being comfortable, first of all, with saying that you want to go see someone, then what does it look like to have found the right therapist?
That's a good point. I think so. Let's say, for example, let's just say, for example, you've been having like a lot of bad nightmares, a lot of bad just memories about something very traumatic to you. This is disturbing. This is very disturbing. When you call a therapist, even if it's like in a clinic setting, or even for my practice, I'm in private practice setting, so usually someone calls. For the most part, you'll get me. And when I'm talking to that person, because I want to also make sure I'm the best fit for them also. It has to be, I think I'm a pretty decent therapist, but I'm not the therapist for everyone. And I want to make sure that that's the skill set's there. And I ask them so quickly, like, so what, and most people will say that, will tell you, well, I just need, I just been angry a lot, or I just been, they'll kind of give a little snippet of what's going on. And most therapists will kind of get an idea of if this is right. If it's something like, like I said, flashbacks, or you just having bad memories or nightmares, you'll know because, and I guess it's on both sides. I guess one is what the person should be asking them. And I think if you're somebody that you're suffering from traumatic events, you should be asking them, do you have any experience with working with anybody? Like myself, I'm having a lot of nightmares. What do you normally do? What is your practice normally like? How do you go about approaching it? You can ask them those questions. How long do you anticipate that I might be in there with you? That might be a good question to ask.
Yes.
If someone is calling and saying, I don't know, I just been feeling sad and I think I'm depressed, you can ask the person, do you have experience with helping people with depression? If you're somebody that you already know that you really prefer to have like maybe a male or female therapist, say you're calling a clinic, save that. Preference is good because it's hard. You gotta find the best matches possible that you can with your therapist, because if you don't, that kind of hinders the process right there. So I think on the other end, I guess to answer a question for a person calling in, that's questions that you should ask. Get an idea of what's going on with you and just saying, this is what's going on with me. Do you have experience? Is this something you could help me with? Most therapists know.
Right.
This is out there, and that's not even, when I say that, you don't have to give the whole spill, because you're gonna say that for the intake or the assessment. A little snippet, I just been at the hospital, I've been in the hospital for the last 3 weeks. That might not be the right setting for you. You might need to go into an inpatient right then and there if you're having active suicidal thoughts and plans, Yeah.
That's very
Make
helpful.
sure everybody's cars are safe.
I hope so.
We're safe out here.
Does anyone have any questions for April?
Do you give strategies about grounding, like how to be present in the moment?
Yes.
Okay. What are some of those exercises or strategies in terms of being present in the moment?
I would say easy one, just for people to know. I always say a good one is what I call naming 5 things you hear, 5 things you feel, 5 things you smell. And you really think about that. That helps people, because you're shifting your mind right then and there off of those thoughts, and it's getting you in that moment. So I will always go with that. So for people, and there's other strategies as well, but I think that is a more simple one for people to kind of remember with the grounding with that. I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually wanted to talk about a body scan I wanted to do, just to show that. It won't take long. So
Do you also want to do, April also has a short activity for stress.
no,
You okay with that one? Okay.
it's up to, so one of the things that when we talk about strategies to help prevent holiday blues is knowing when you need to take a break, right? That was one of the things you'll see a lot of times, knowing you need to take a break when we're overwhelmed. But the catch to that is that sometimes we're not in tune with ourselves. We don't know that. Some people say, well, I just spazzed out. 0 to 100, right? Not in tune. Usually, even with anger, our body physically gives a warning sign. Either you're shaking, your leg is shaking, there's tension, your heart's racing, you're sweating, but we don't catch that. I like to work with clients on how to be aware of their body. So I just wanted to show you a quick mindfulness. We call it mindfulness. And mindfulness is simply being aware. Being aware. And it's a body scan that I just wanted to show everyone that take time to just check in. Set your alarm clock on your phone. Set a reminder on your phone to just check in. Just a quick check-in. So I just want everybody to, this is called body scan. I just want everybody to just kind of sit with both feet, on the ground, just get comfortable. And start with taking, I don't know if everyone, I assume most people have deep breathing here, but you will take some deep breaths in from here. Go through in your nose. Relax out any stress. I just want, you can close your eyes if you like. I want you to just go from the top of your head. And I just want you to scan and just be aware around your head. Is there any tension, any pounding? Go down to like into your temples and notice, is there any pounding there? Just be aware. Scan on down to like your jaws. And I want you to pay attention to your back molars and your teeth. Is there any aching there from possibly clenching your jaws back and forth, which is very common sometimes with people with anxiety. Just notice. And I want you to work down into your throat. Is there like a little lump there? Do you notice any lump, or do you notice any feelings there? And I want to scan down to your shoulder blades. Are those muscles right there in your shoulder blades very tense? Are they loose? And I want you going down to your chest area. I want you to notice your breathing. Just notice how you're breathing. I want you to notice, are you breathing fast and shallow? Are you breathing slow? Notice the rhythm of your heartbeat. Is it normal pace or is it going fast? Just notice. Go down into your chest area. Notice how does your stomach feel? Do you notice any type of movement in your stomach area? Then I want you to scan down to your forearms and just notice your muscles. Let those come to your attention. Down to your fingers, down to your fingertips. Are they sweaty? Are they loose? Are they tight? And notice your hips, down to your thighs. Notice your butt cheek area actually. Is it tight? Are you kind of sitting tight? Or are they loose? Relax. Notice your calf muscles. Are those tight? Are they unraveled like a cord unraveling? Down to your feet, down to your toes. Just notice. Then I want you to notice your thoughts. Don't engage them, just notice them. What are you thinking? What do you notice? You think about what you're going to eat. You think about how long she's going to be talking. Just notice. Don't try to respond to it. Don't try to make plans. Just notice. Don't engage them. Don't judge them. Just let them be. And I want you to take a deep breath in your nose again. Exhale out slowly. I'm going to open our eyes. Usually a little bit longer than that, but I just want you to know that sometimes we don't know. Is that awkward for people?
No. It's good to just zone in and focus on different areas. Things you weren't even aware of that you're living with, and pain in your back and stuff like that. But it's good to focus on.
I think it's good to check in with ourselves, and that's one of the strategies too. Knowing when you need a break. You don't want to be snapping at your guests. Know when you might need to. Sometimes you might have to go in the bathroom. Just come back out. That's one of the other strategies. Something else too. With strategies, volunteer. When we're going through stuff, just making other people's day. Soup kitchen, going to the church. If you're an animal lover like myself, barks, animal shelter, go something. It can sometimes help us get out of our own mind about what's going on with ourselves.
There was an article out, I think about 3 weeks ago, that I circulated around through Kaiser, that said people are healthier who give of their time to others.
Yes. There's a lot of research to back this up. And also research out is gratitude. That's one of my other strategies. When we come from a state of gratitude, no matter what we're going through, we can name things that are going wrong. But when we can say, but this is what's going right for us, and put us in a state of being grateful, there are studies around that also that help people. People might say, I'm in a hospital, but be grateful that you're in the hospital and you have staff to care for you. There are some people in this world that cannot get medical care. Be grateful that you have the opportunity to get possible, good care.
I think sometimes also when we think about gratitude, we think about big things. I'm grateful that I have a house that to live in. I'm grateful that, you know, I have a car to drive in.
Yeah.
But I'm mindful when I pray, and my staff can tell you this, is that I pray for those things that may seem small but are very significant. I'm prayerful. I'm thankful that I have the ability to see. Now I need these glasses to see clearly, but I mean I have glasses. There are a lot of people who can't see and can't get glasses. I'm grateful for the articulation of speech and for the activity of my limbs, and you know, the fact that when I go home, I'm going to have heat in my home. I mean, all of us see all these homeless people on the street, and some of those cold nights, I'm thinking, how can they sleep outside in that cold? But they do it.
Have no choice.
Right, have no choice.
Something else I wanted to say too is about strategies. When it comes to family members, try to set aside differences if possible. If possible. Even if you can't get it done over the holidays, try to be in a cordial state. But with that being said, I tell my clients this, because a lot of times people, especially if it comes from like sexual abuse and you got that person still there, they get anxious about should I be there. Family does not get a pass. Family does not get a pass to cause disruption in your life. If you're in a situation where you've told such and such, you're bashing me and it's making, I even had a client one time where he went through and he had maintained sobriety, I think, for like 6 months after he got out of the program. And he came from a family of substance abuse. Went back home, because we had his dad. Parents, people around him still doing drugs. While he was there. And he always said, well, I can't just, you know, that's my family. That's my such and such and such. If you've asked them to not do that so we can help you maintain what you work so hard for, you gotta make a decision. You can't go over there. You might have to call them. You might have to meet your mother at a neutral spot, but you can't put yourself in that situation. Family and people don't get a pass to cause chaos in our life. We're responsible for our mental and physical well-being, and I think that's also something I see with a lot of clients I have the opportunity to work with. They struggle. Well, that's such and such, such and such. You know, we gotta make a choice.
That's a fascinating point you just said, that we have an obligation to take care of our health.
Yes.
At all, not all costs, but as a priority.
Yes.
Sure. By the same token, you got those people who want to advocate responsibility for themselves and responsibility for their happiness to someone else. And despite how you try to get someone to move from the problem into the solution, it really takes a person being willing to acknowledge it first, and then being willing to step into that solution. But until they are there, for those persons who are around them, who are caretakers, sometimes it can be really, well, at any rate, even more so at this time of year, when you want someone else's happiness for them, but you can't give it to them if they aren't willing to work for it themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But for that person who, unfortunately, is the one that's feeling the brunt of this, you got any suggestions?
So you're saying that a person is trying to help that person.
A person, I'll make it very personal. I want to move my son into his solution, but he's not ready yet to even acknowledge his problem. He's got one, but he's not willing yet to acknowledge it. So it makes this time of year, particularly when you want people to be in a good space, okay, and you know you can't move someone there. What's the suggestion for the person who must?
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
I think we all kind of been there somewhere before. But we had somebody we want.
Probably we have. But
Yeah.
What are your suggestions to the person who has to withstand this until the one they care for moves into the solution because they acknowledge that they have a problem?
Ooh, that's a big one. From a personal level and from a therapist. There are clients that come to us. I'm sure any therapist, even Dr. Chuck, who's out here, there are people that we said, this is the issue. You gotta take your medication. You gotta do this, and we're rooting. Some people are not there yet. When you've done all that you can do. And we got to be careful, even as a
Stay
therapist.
alive.
Right.
When we do all that we can do,
Yes.
because what happens is we're going to break boundaries a little bit. We're going to start doing things that we shouldn't do. We're taking on loads that we have to acknowledge ourselves that we are not. We can inspire, we can encourage, we can give the resources, but sometimes we have to accept that that person is not there yet. And I think that that is one of the hardest things to do, is watch someone ready to self-destruct when you know where they're about to go. But you have to come to terms with yourself and say, I've done everything I can do.
And
Because
my
when-
priority is to maintain my health.
Right.
And so for our spiritual people, prayer, right? Sometimes, like I said, sometimes we can have to look at, okay, is there somebody else in my family that they can be receptive? I have a niece, and I can say, this pen is blue, and
It's black.
such and such a word come along with this pen. She's like, yeah, you're right. Didn't I just say this? Sometimes people receive things a little bit different. So if you know someone else that can kind of get to them a little bit more, just to get them into that resource to help them, try that. But if you've done everything, I get this a lot with parents. Even in there, it is the hardest thing, especially in drug addiction. And sometimes what happens is when we don't, we begin, even there's some level of guilt. And sometimes we gotta check ourselves too. What is causing us to do things so much that we know we've now crossed the boundary of, like now, like we're becoming an enabler. We gotta make sure not to become an enabler and trying to help too, if that makes sense. So you know someone who's not kept a job and all those things, but you continue to bail them out each time and give them, we're now borderlining enabling. You know, I had some parents who they know the person they have the substance abuse, and they'll come asking money. Well, I know I know what he's about to do with it, but I just feel so. We gotta resolve our own things to make sure we gotta reflect and make sure we don't have no unresolved guilt, no unhealthy thoughts that's causing us to cross those boundaries a little bit. Even with therapists, some therapists that I work with, I have to say, we're not here. Some therapists come in this that we're trying to save people, and they cross boundaries big time sometimes. And that has to be, examined a little bit too. So I don't know if that answers or not. Anything you want to add to that? Or
Well, I just wanted to say that, just from a personal experience, I remember when our oldest son was in the 11th grade, and I don't know what was going on with this 11th grade year, but I mean, just a very gifted young man, still is, but it was something about, we were looking at grades shifting and attitudes shifting. I knew it had to do with hormones, but there were some other things that could be going on. And I'm just like, you gotta stay focused on your grades, and you have to do better. We're applying to colleges, they're gonna see these grades. And I just remember my mother saying to me, you can't want it more for him than he wants it for himself. And when she said it, I mean, it's almost like my body said, like, I exhaled, and I was thinking, like, he's got to want this. He's got to want it. Of course, I want it for him because he's my child. I love him. But there comes a point when you have to just, you gotta let it.
Let them take it.
They have to take it on their own. And it's very, very difficult for someone like me who thinks they can, they can change the world. They can, I can fix it. I can make it better. And then you just, you move into a space where you just like, you have to let it go. And letting something go and not fixing it, taking your hands out of it, just from a faith perspective, that is very, very challenging. But again, from a faith perspective, you just have to, if you say you're gonna give it over, then you give it over, and you have to step back. The step back part it's always been challenging for me.
Especially for a mother.
Yeah.
I know when my daughter was 16, and she thought she was grown, and I had to talk and told her, every time you hit me or say something smart and you think you're grown, you're gonna be grown. So when she was 16 and she hit me, and I forgot she was my child, I picked up and threw her down and put my foot on her neck, and she ran out the house and called me a name. She went to her girlfriend's house. So I went over there and I said, you remember to talk, you grown, you did it. Strip down, take everything off that belongs to me because you grown. So I stripped her down, took my clothes, my underwear, my everything, and I said, now you grown. called her father. He came and picked her up, and he came to the house and he said, well, I need to get her some clothes. No, she's grown. You buy her some clothes. So she lived with her father for a year, and after that she called and she said, Ma, I'm sorry. And she came back home, and I never had a problem with her again. So I don't know what happened. So, and we never talked about that. As of today, we never talked about it. And she has a daughter now. So like when we talk about things, and I say, well, you know, I always told her before she had a daughter, I said, well, you'll learn what I taught you when you have a daughter. And then she talked to me and she said, Ma, I don't know. I said, well, you're going to learn along the way. But just remember that the issue that we have between each other. So you have to take it easy and be more patient. But I just couldn't believe that I went through that with her. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And I made it, because when she ran out the house, when she ran out the house.
I know, isn't it?
And my son,
Yes.
I use the analogy of there's the Martians come down, they take them back, your child up,
They take my child.
they leave a shell, it looks like your child, and then they
Then
bring
they
them
bring
back
them back.
around
It is, that's
18
a
and
good
19, they come back, and then suddenly you recognize them. But I think it's just a process of growing up and trying to be on their own.
Yes.
And growing up faster than they
And
have
I
the
thank
resources
God,
to maintain.
I thank God for watching over her, because when she ran out the house, I fell to my knees and I said, God, I just need you to watch her. And when she was out, she would call me and say stuff like, I'm with my girlfriends, we get ready to smoke a blunt. And I was like, and I said, God, just watch over her. So, like you said, the Martians took over her, and she came back. But we have the best relationship.
You do. You travel and everything.
We travel. We have a family trip, so we have the best relationship now.
My 24-year-old turned out to be just wonderful.
Yes.
And mine.
Just a joy.
Wonderful human being.
Yeah.
But hallelujah.
Yeah, it was a couple of rough years. Yeah. So, you have any closing thoughts, April?
I don't think, I just think that I just want to normalize something that at some point in everybody's life, we're going to feel down. As we expect, when people come and they go, it's normal, it's common. And just continue to be in tune with yourself and be real with yourself when you know that you need, when things have escalated a bit more and you need a little bit more help. And just continue to take care of yourself. That's pretty much what I think. I hope everyone has a good holiday.
And I have a question for you. By you being a counselor, do sometimes you need to go and talk to somebody, because everybody unloads on you? So do sometimes you need to just unload?
Me,
Okay.
never.
I'm
I'm joking.
You,
Yes.
and I wonder, like, does counselors need to go and talk to somebody sometimes?
Just like first responders.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have, and it's funny you said, because I have a thing I'm about to start making what's called Help for the Helpers. Who does the Help for the Helpers? You know, who does the helpers go to? For me, it is prayer, spirituality, my husband. When I have to process sometimes difficult clients, I was just talking, Dr. Porter, who's one of our psychiatrists at another agency, Hope is leaving. She was like my go-to. I was telling you, like my slash therapist slash, but I do have people in my corner. My mother.
Good.
I don't care how busy I am. I probably might call her about 4 or 5 times a day. And sometimes it's not even that she might have the response. Sometimes it's just listening.
Yes.
And I do have good life coach too.
Good.
That's like mentor. So yes, everybody needs somebody that
Yes.
they can. Everybody. And my pastor.
Yes.
My church, my childhood pastor. When things get rough, he actually married us too. So I remember I was an undergrad. He would be. I probably was the only undergrad college. He would send me scriptures through the email and things like that, encourage me. Depending on how I was feeling, he would just. And I don't know a scripture by heart to this day, but that's why I have this pen. But yeah, so.
I would like to ask anybody this, if you think that there's somebody that might need to be checked on during the holiday season, that we take that on as a task.
And sometimes your parents, they be sad because, you know, everybody grew up and married and went their separate ways. And like with my sisters, they're married, and sometimes they don't come on holidays, or they don't have time to take my mother to the doctor, and I gotta do everything. But guess what? I said, you know what? I take care of my mother the way I want my daughter to take care of me.
Absolutely.
That's something I would add. Can I add this too? Check on the strong ones.
Yes.
Check on the strong ones. Yes. Everybody thinks that even if I don't know if anyone's considered a strong one here, but even when you do kind of tell someone they kind of, oh, she got it. She'll get it together. She always do.
Yeah.
Check on them. Ask them. I don't care how much they feel like they're put together and things. Check on them. Even if it's just like, can I just carry this stuff in there for you? People get, even from a religious aspect, didn't Jesus wept? Wasn't when he was going to the cross, did he fall? This one had to help him up. That's a powerful, powerful thing. Check on your strong people. Trust me. You know,
Yeah, I call it Flag Day. When my mom passed in 2012, and my mom and I were very close. Similar to, I don't know if I called her 4 times a day, but we talked every day. And I have a friend who would check on me. I mean, like, she called me. I know she called me every day, multiple times a day. And especially around the holidays, it didn't make a difference. She would call to make sure that me and the boys were doing something, because at the time, I was not remarried. So she would make sure me and the boys were okay. And she called me on Flag Day, June 14th, I never forget. And she's just like, I'm just calling to check on you. I said, on Flag Day? So that's my little catchphrase, you know, when it comes to even, you know, do your Flag Day check-in, you know. And I just, I'm thankful, thank God for her, because people do see me a lot of times as the strong one, right? And so they would be like, we know Jan was close to her mom, and she's gonna be okay, right? Jan's gonna be okay. But there sometimes, even especially around Christmas, because my mom loved Christmas, when I put up that Christmas tree, you know, I weep because she loved to just sit there and watch a Christmas tree. And then, you know, I get myself together and I can move on. But you know, I appreciate that, Mama.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, April. Check on folks, and even the strong
I'm gonna
ones.
post that on Facebook today, on social media. Check if you know
Let me
somebody.
get
just
Alana
check
to make
on.
me a meme.
Just,
Check
that's
on
right.
folks.
Just check on
Even the
somebody.
strong ones.
Even the strong ones.
Yes.
Let's all post.
Yeah, that's all posts. Thank you,
Thank
April.
you, April. That was wonderful.
That was wonderful.
See, these strong ones need it.
Yes, yes.
So there's more food here
Yes.
for those of you who came in after we
And
started.
April's gonna stick around to answer a few questions. Somebody,
oh, sure.
yeah, I wanted to ask. We got another
You
10
want,
minutes.
we
I know.